Thank you, Nina Enrique. Good evening, everyone. I'm Alma Angeles for NET25 World News. On tonight's headlines. New details emerge about the tragic plane crash in Kazakhstan. The Azerbaijan Airlines flight bound for Grozny, Russia, went down, claiming at least 38 lives. Social media footage shows damage to the wreckage, with sources indicating the aircraft may have been hit by a Russian air defense system.
It seems likely that it was potentially caused by an air defense system, just because the shrapnel pattern was consistent with being shot down by a surface-to-air missile.
A captured North Korean soldier has died from severe injuries in Ukraine, a rare and significant development in this ongoing conflict. And in South Korea, Parliament has impeached acting President Han Duck-soo following his controversial decision not to appoint 3 constitutional court justices. Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok, now stepping into the role, warns this move could harm the country's economic credibility. Plus, help and hope reach distressed overseas Filipino workers in Bahrain.
We are here at the Philippine Embassy, Manama, Kingdom of Bahrain, witnessing the INC giving program of the members of the Church of Christ or the Iglesia ni Cristo.
And the news starts now. A North Korean soldier captured by Ukrainian forces has died from severe injuries, marking a rare and significant development in this ongoing war in Ukraine. This marks the first known instance of a North Korean prisoner of war in Ukraine since Pyongyang began sending troops to back Russia's war effort. The National Intelligence Service said it got the confirmation through an allied intelligence agency. Ukraine and South Korea believe North Korea has deployed over 10,000 soldiers to support Russia, though neither Moscow nor Pyongyang has admitted to it. The captured soldier gained attention after a photo believed to show him surfaced on Telegram. Ukrainian forces claim North Korean soldiers are being issued fake Russian IDs, and President Volodymyr Zelensky recently shared footage alleging that Russian troops burned the faces of deceased North Koreans to hide their identities. Intelligence reports suggest many of these troops are from North Korea's elite storm corps, trained in sabotage, infiltration, and assassinations. Zelensky also revealed that over 3,000 North Korean soldiers have been killed or injured in Russia's Kursk region. He warned that the growing ties between Moscow and Pyongyang could raise tensions around the Korean peninsula. Eyewitness video released on Thursday showed 2 seemingly new Chinese military aircraft with stealthy characteristics flying over the southwestern Chinese city of Chengdu. Both aircraft do not have tails, and the larger of the 2 designs is roughly diamond-shaped. The smaller one has a more conventional layout. Both have the lack of 90-degree angles, typical of stealth shaping. China's Ministry of Defense did not immediately respond to a request for comment. The U.S. Department of Defense did not immediately respond to a request for comment after hours during a holiday week. 4 sources say Russian air defenses downed an Azerbaijan Airlines plane that crashed in Kazakhstan, killing 38 people. The plane plummeted to the ground and erupted into a ball of fire near the city of Aktau in Kazakhstan. The aircraft had diverted from an area of southern Russia where Moscow has repeatedly used air defense systems against Ukrainian drone strikes. Thomas I. Likeness for more.
The jetliner with 62 passengers and 5 crew members aboard had flown from Azerbaijan's capital of Baku to Grozny in Russia's southern Chechnya region. It then veered off hundreds of miles across the Caspian Sea. The plane crashed on the opposite shore of the Caspian after what Russia's aviation watchdog said was an emergency that may have been caused by a bird strike. Officials did not explain why it had crossed the sea. One of the sources familiar with Azerbaijan's investigation into the crash says preliminary results showed the plane was struck by a Russian missile. The source says no one claims that it was done on purpose. Charles A. Kepchen of the U.S. Council on Foreign Relations says this is not an unusual situation.
These kinds of crashes, if indeed it is a crash that was the result of anti-aircraft fire, are not that unusual in war zones. In fact, we had a case just recently in which a U.S. anti-aircraft fire hit a U.S. aircraft. This is in the area around Yemen, where the U.S. is taking strikes against Houthi targets. So these kinds of things do happen.
Russia's defense ministry did not respond to a request for a comment. Kazakhstan's deputy prime minister says he can neither confirm nor deny that Russian air defenses downed the plane. Thomas I. Likeness, NET25 World News.
And we're learning more about the devastating passenger plane crash in Kazakhstan that claimed dozens of lives. The flight, operated by Azerbaijan Airlines, had taken off from Azerbaijan and was en route to Grozny, Russia, but tragically it never reached its destination. U.S. officials report preliminary evidence that a Russian anti-aircraft system may have mistakenly targeted the plane. Of the 67 people on board, 38 were killed. New footage revealed shrapnel holes in the fuselage, pointing to the possibility of a surface-to-air missile strike, contradicting earlier speculation of a bird strike.
Once I saw the photos of the damage pattern on the tail of the airplane, it seemed likely that it was potentially caused by an air defense system, just because the shrapnel pattern was consistent with being shot down by a surface-to-air missile.
Flight 8243 faced complications soon after takeoff. Dense fog forced a diversion towards the Caspian Sea, but its GPS was reportedly jammed, causing significant deviations. Survivors recounted hearing an explosion, while cell phone footage captured oxygen masks deployed and visible cabin damage. The crash occurred near conflict zones linked to Russia's ongoing war in Ukraine.
I think there's a high probability that what the government of Azerbaijan has concluded is what happened, that being that a Russian air defense system misidentified the plane because the plane had been rerouted, and that they engaged it with air defense systems because there have been attacks from that direction by Ukrainian unmanned systems, and so they probably mistook the passenger jet for a Ukrainian unmanned system and engaged it with air defenses.
The incident brings back chilling memories of Malaysian Airlines Flight 17, shut down by Russian-backed forces over eastern Ukraine back in 2014, killing all 298 on board. The Kremlin is urging caution, asking for investigations to be completed before drawing conclusions. Russia, Azerbaijan, and Kazakhstan are all probing the cause of the crash, which occurred just 2 miles short of the runway. One survivor's father says his son is receiving psychological treatment for the trauma of the crash.
He was undergoing treatment, and now he is receiving psychological treatment. They have examined him, and he has sustained trauma, so he is currently receiving treatment for that. After coming here, the psychological treatment will continue as well.
Investigators have recovered both black boxes, and experts from Brazil, where the aircraft was manufactured, are arriving in Kazakhstan tomorrow to analyze the data.
I gave relevant instructions and spoke to the Prime Minister. Under his supervision, a commission has been set up. At the same time, the delegation of Azerbaijan was sent to the city of Aktau, where the accident had happened. The commission's task is, in short, to fully investigate the matter, the causes and all the details of the accident, and to inform both me and the people of Azerbaijan.
South Korea's parliament impeached acting President Han Duck-soo over his role in declaring short-lived martial law, deepening the country's political crisis. And this follows the Constitutional Court's announcement that it would swiftly trial suspended President Yoon Suk-yeol. Take a look. Han, who stepped in as acting president, after Yoon was impeached on December 14 for declaring martial law on December 3, now faces his own removal, marking a turbulent moment in South Korea's democratic history. The impeachment motion, led by opposition parties, passed with 192 votes of the 300, despite intense protests from ruling People Power Party members who surrounded the speaker's podium and chanted that the vote was invalid, accusing Parliament of committing tyranny.
I declare that the impeachment motion of Prime Minister Han Duck-soo was passed, with 192 votes out of 192 votes cast.
Ahead of the parliamentary session, opposition leader Lee Jae-myung reaffirmed his party's plan to impeach the acting president, accusing Han of acting for insurrection.
권한 대행은 내란 대행으로 변신했습니다. 내란 수계를 배출한 국민의힘은 헌정 수호 책임을 저버린 채 내란 수계에 친위대를 자임하고 나섰습니다. 되겠습니다. 국민이 가리키는 희망의 길을.
The impeachment plan was introduced after Han's refusal to immediately appoint 3 justices to the Constitutional Court, citing limits to his acting role. The threshold for impeaching Han was unclear until just before voting began. Speaker Woo Won-shik declared that a simple majority would be sufficient for parliamentary approval. Following the vote, Han issued a statement agreeing to step aside to avoid further chaos, stating he would await a ruling from the Constitutional Court on his impeachment. By law, Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok will assume the acting presidency. Choi earlier urged Parliament to reconsider the impeachment, warning that it could severely harm the country's economic standing.
This impeachment motion against the acting president, Han Duck-soo, is the same as an impeachment motion against the entire cabinet. If the impeachment motion is passed, the administrative capacity will be weakened by continuous risk of impeachment, and the very purpose of the cabinet member's existence will disappear. We earnestly request the reconsideration of the impeachment motion against the acting president and the Prime Minister, Han Duck-soo. We sincerely hope that further political uncertainty, which threatens our economy and national security, will not be aggravated, and once again, we are calling for the cooperation of both ruling and opposition parties so that the government can focus solely on the economy and public welfare.
Now, South Korea's new acting president, Choi Sang-mok, shared that the government has ordered the military to stay on high alert. He also cautioned that North Korea might try to exploit the current political situation to cause problems.
북한의 도발과 선전, 선동에 빈틈없는 대비 태세를 유지해 주기 바랍니다.
A spokesperson for the World Health Organization said the UN aircrew member hurt in an airstrike on Yemen's main international airport suffered serious injuries but is now recovering in hospital. Israel said it struck multiple targets linked to the Iran-allied Houthi movement in Yemen, including Sana'a International Airport, and Houthi media said at least 6 people were killed. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus was in the airport waiting to depart when the aerial bombardment took place and said that a member of his plane's crew was injured. The injured man, who worked for the UN Humanitarian Air Service, had to be operated on, according to Tedros. He appeared to be recovering satisfactorily, according to him, and Tedros, who was in Yemen to negotiate the release of detained UN staff and to assess the humanitarian situation, would continue working in the country until his flight is able to depart.
Secretary General condemns the escalation between Yemen and Israel. Israeli airstrikes today on Sana'a International Airport, the Red Sea ports, and power stations in Yemen are especially alarming. The airstrikes reportedly resulted in numerous casualties, including at least 3 people killed and dozens more injured. A United Nations humanitarian air service crew member was also injured when the airport was hit. A high-level delegation by the UN, headed by the World Health Organization Director General, Dr. Tedros, was at the airport when the strikes occurred. The delegation had just concluded discussions on the humanitarian situation in Yemen and on the release of UN and other detained personnel. Today's airstrikes follow around a year of escalatory actions by the Houthis in the Red Sea and the region that threaten civilians, regional stability, and freedom of maritime navigation.
Mothers and daughters of hostages held by Hamas staged a silent sit-in protest in Tel Aviv, calling for Israel to secure a deal for their loved ones' release, as ceasefire talks between Israel and Hamas falter.
Dressed in white, mothers and daughters of hostages held by Hamas held a silent sit-in protest in Tel Aviv on Wednesday. They are calling on Israel to reach a deal for their loved ones to be released.
Unfortunately, we are marking the 446th day of our loved ones having been suffering in Hamas tunnels. This is one of the longest, if not the longest, hostage crisis in the history of the modern Western world. This is unacceptable. It has to stop today. Let me be clear, the conditions for a deal were never better. Just yesterday, Israel's leading analyst reported that Israel's deterrence is at an all-time high. This is precisely why we, the families, believe we are at the strongest position ever to secure a deal.
The protest, cut short due to a security alert, comes as Hamas and Israel trade blame over their failure to conclude a ceasefire agreement. In recent days, both sides have reported progress. Hamas said that Israel had laid down further conditions. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accused the Palestinian militant group of going back on understandings already reached. Israeli negotiators returned to Israel from Qatar on Tuesday evening for consultations about a hostage deal after a significant week of talks, Netanyahu's office said on Tuesday. The U.S., Qatar, and Egypt have stepped up efforts to conclude a phased deal in the past 2 weeks. One of the challenges has been agreements on Israeli troop deployments. In a video released on Wednesday, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said Israel would retain security control of the enclave, including with buffer zones and controlling posts.
Security will remain in the hands of the IDF. IDF will be able to act in any way to remove threats, prevent tunneling, prevent terrorist infrastructure, prevent terrorist organization and attempts to harm the State of Israel or IDF soldiers.
Hamas is demanding an end to the war, while Israel says it wants to end Hamas's rule of the enclave first, to ensure it will no longer pose a threat to Israelis. The war was triggered by Hamas's October 7, 2023 attack on southern Israel, in which 1,200 people were killed and 251 taken hostage to Gaza, according to Israeli tallies. Israel's campaign against Hamas in Gaza has since killed more than 45,300 Palestinians, according to health officials in the Hamas-run enclave.
Hawaii's Kilauea volcano erupted again this week, sending lava flowing across the crater floor. While the eruption has paused for now, scientists are warning that activity could resume at any time. The U.S. Geological Survey says the volcano remains under orange watch, meaning some hazards still exist. Residents near Hawaii Volcanoes National Park are being advised to stay alert as volcanic activity can change rapidly. Meanwhile, Australia's Victoria State is bracing for potentially devastating wildfires today as a heat wave fuels extreme fire danger. Temperatures are soaring and strong winds are creating volatile conditions. Several fires are burning out of control and authorities have issued warnings to residents in affected areas, urging them to evacuate if necessary. The largest fire is burning in Grampians National Park, and authorities fear it could threaten homes. Emergency crews from across the country are assisting local firefighters and water-bombing aircraft are battling the blazes. These conditions are reminiscent of the devastating Black Summer fires of 2019 to 2020, which caused widespread destruction across the country. And the news continues here on NET25. We'll be right back. Two experienced sailors were killed in similar but separate incidents in the Sydney to Hobart yacht race. That is according to organizers and local authorities today. The first loss of life in the prestigious ocean race since 1998, and race organizers said in a statement on their website that both crew members died after they were hit by the sail boom, a horizontal pole which holds down the sails and swings depending on the direction of the wind.
The sailing community is a very close community, and there's about 1,000 sailors on the water in this race, and to lose two in this fashion is just devastating. As I'm sure you all know, there were two separate boats, and in both cases we believe that the member of crew was hit by a boom. I have no other information as to how that came about and what the circumstances were, so I'm afraid I can't elaborate on that today. The forecast was strong winds to gale force winds. These fleets can handle those winds easily. They're ocean races, they're used to those winds. It was not extreme conditions.
Access to guide dogs is limited for many blind people, but now a revolutionary handheld device is offering a promising alternative, empowering users with a new sense of independence and freedom.
Researchers call this device a smart guide dog. It's called Shape, and it's designed to help direct blind people to their target location.
You know, you can't tell your guide dog, take me to the new coffee shop that's just opened on Tottenham Court Road, but you can tell this device and it will guide you there using a combination of different sensors and this kind of, quite unique haptic feedback.
Shape looks like a torch, which bends to indicate where a person needs to move. It straightens out when the user is facing the correct direction. The prototype, developed by MakeSense, uses small electric motors to change its shape. It will eventually incorporate a range of digital products and sensors, including maps and navigation tools. This is MakeSense co-founder Ad Spears.
People are really good at recognizing shapes with their hands, and this device tries to exploit that. It tries to basically leverage the fact that we can recognize shapes by making a device whose shape can change. And by doing that, we make a system that you don't need any training on how to use it. It's just very intuitive.
In a study published in Nature Scientific Reports, Spears and his team put Shape to the test. They gathered 10 participants with visual impairment and examined their ability to locate 60 targets as quickly as possible in a controlled indoor environment. The researchers measured how long it took and how efficient the route was. They then ran the test with 10 sighted participants.
The remarkable thing is after each person did 60 targets, found 60 targets, we did a statistical comparison and found that there was no difference between the abilities of the sighted people with natural vision and the visually impaired people using our shape-changing device.
Spear says his hope is to revolutionize navigation for the blind and visually impaired using haptic technology.
We had a virtual reality setup with some tracking systems.
Hope arrived for distressed overseas Filipino workers in Bahrain as members of the Iglesia Ni Cristo launched their Care for Humanity INC Giving Program. Now, this initiative provided much-needed assistance to OFWs facing hardship, showcasing the power of faith and compassion in action.
We are here at the Philippine Embassy, Manama, Kingdom of Bahrain, witnessing the INC giving program of the members of the Church of Christ or the Iglesia Ni Cristo. Despite the terrible epidemics, devastating natural disasters brought on by global warming, extreme poverty, and other hopeless circumstances that people face worldwide, Iglesia Ni Cristo members have stepped up their humanitarian efforts, by offering special goods to help people immediately deal with life's innumerable challenges through their extensive INC giving program. And in addition to that, they have conducted medical mission like taking blood pressures and monitoring blood sugar levels.
Currently, there are 10 adults and 4 babies at the OWA shelter. They are distributed with luggage, hygienic items, diapers, and milk.
Ako ay nagpapasalamat sa Iglesia ni Cristo dito sa Bahrain at yung kanilang proyektong ito dahil ngayon nandito sila sa embahada, pumunta para magbigay tulong sa ating mga kababayan, mga kababaihan, yung iba sa kanila may anak na nandito sa shelter ng embahada na nangangailangan ng tulong. So on behalf of the distressed Filipino women na nandito sa shelter, on behalf also of the Office of Migrant Workers Affairs, sa ilalim ng embassy, kami nagpapasalamat sa membro ng Iglesia ni Cristo dito sa Kingdom of Bahrain sa proyektong ito.
Yung mga distress OFWs natin na dumarating dito, meron kaming mga programa. Pagkatapos ng opisina, mga alas 5 ng hapon, pinapalabas na namin sila. Meron kaming nagbabadminton sila, lumalakad, lumalanghap ng sariwang hangin. Ganun din naman sa umaga. At 5 o'clock, nag-exercise sila dito sa labas. At the same time, meron kaming mga skills development training na ginagawa na isinasama namin sila tulad ng mga food processing, bread making, nakasama naman sila. And then, meron din kaming mga psychosocial activities. Nag-iimbita kami ng mga nurse natin dito sa Bahrain. Maraming salamat sa Philippine Nursing Associations na kinakausap sila. Meron kaming the stressing briefing exercise para sa kanila, lalong-lalo na yung mga nakaranas ng mga violence na kinuha namin sa mga pulis.
Every Friday po meron po kaming SLE, Special Learning Experience, kagaya ng pinag-activities ko po sila, naglalaro po sila dito, yung mga ganun po, para minsan naibsan po yung mga iniisip nila na mga problema.
Nakipag-ugnayan po tayo sa mga kinataban ng embahada ukol po sa bilang ng mga kababayan po natin na kasalukuyang nasa kanilang pangangalaga. At inalam din po natin kung ano po yung kanila talagang mga pangunahing pangangailangan. At yun nga po, mula sa kanila, nag-request po sila na kumbaga maaari ay bigyan sila ng luggage bag na magagamit po nila sa pagbabalik po doon po sa ating bansa. Gayun din po, meron din pong mga bata po rito, mga baby po. Nag-request din po sila ng gatas, diaper. Ganyan din po yung iba po ay nag-request din po ng mga gamit sa personal hygiene.
Ang layunin nito ay upang makatulong tayo sa ating kapwa-tao, kaanib man o hindi kaanib sa Iglesia ni Cristo. Ito ay bilang pagsunod din natin sa utos ng ating Panginoong Diyos na ibigin natin ang ating kapwa-tao. Kaya nagpapasalamat tayo sa ating tagapamahalang pangkalahatan, sa kapatid na Eduardo Manalo, sa ganitong aktibidad na kanilang inilulunsad.
This INC giving program at the Philippine Embassy is not just sharing love and care to all OFWs in distress, but rather to comfort and uplift their devastated emotions through camaraderie or love of brotherhood by the members of the Iglesia ni Cristo. Reporting from Bahrain, this is Lorling Talimlim for NET25 World News.
And that's it for tonight's broadcast. For everyone here on NET25, I'm Alma Angeles. Have a great weekend, everybody. Good night.